Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. What goes together better than war and inflation? It's a combination we don't typically think of, despite the reality of it being evident to anyone who takes even a cursory glance through a history book. That's why Ron Paul famously said, quote, "It is no coincidence that the century of total war coincided with the century of central banking," end quote. Thankfully, our friends over at the Mises Institute, named after the 20th century's Ludwig von Mises of the Austrian School of Economics, put together a handy conference to explain exactly that intersection, as well as to explore inflation more broadly, with their first event of the year in Tampa, Florida. The Institute's very own president, Thomas DiLorenzo, spoke on exactly this. Watch.
My old professor, James Buchanan, who won the Nobel Prize in 1986, I guess it was now, it's ancient history now. But he wrote a book, co-authored a book called Democracy and Deficit, and they had a big section on what's called fiscal illusion. And it's not the kind of thing that students would read about that much in a textbook, but fiscal illusion is a simple idea that, printing money to pay for government programs makes the perception of the cost of government lower. And it doesn't seem like it's expensive. Just think if the government said, okay, we want to finance the war in Ukraine, and we're going to have to send every family, a tax-paying family, a bill for $20,000 this year. I would imagine that the enthusiasm, you'd see far fewer yellow ribbons on trees in America, and the color of the Ukrainian flag, and bumper stickers and all that, if you got that $20,000 tax bill to send to the criminals in Ukraine, as far as that goes. So even Adam Smith, in his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776, pointed out, he said that wars would be less frequent and shorter if they were financed by taxes. And he was really expressing this idea that Buchanan called fiscal illusion, that they make the perceived cost of war lower, and everything else, not just war. The Fed, when it was created in 1913, it financed about a fourth of World War I. And so there might not have been American participation in World War I had it not been the Fed in existence. And of course, the income tax came in also at the same time, and the top rate went from it was originally 7%, and it went to 77% because there was an emergency, after all, the war. As far as they never did go back down to 7%.
Our next guest tonight also delivered a powerful speech. So without further ado, joining us now to discuss is Tho Bishop, the editorial and content manager at the Mises Institute. Tho, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So in your speech, you argue that we have an economic system that is largely built upon gaslighting the public about the state of the real economy. Can you explain some of that for us?
Absolutely. This is one of the subjects that is the least well taught. And it goes down to the socialization of money. When we went away from the gold standard, we had the government control without any sort of objective measure the dollar. And when the currency is just the foundation of an economy, that allows the government to get away with all sorts of dangerous things. And what we have right now is, we get inundated with propaganda about, oh, well, look at this great jobs numbers. And you look at the jobs numbers like, oh, it's majority government jobs and part-time jobs. But hey, look, the jobs numbers are good. The economy's doing great. Or inflation numbers that don't take into account food and energy. They do this to provide cover for whatever big policy plan, whatever the Fed wants to do, whatever the Treasury wants to do. And the people that are getting screwed are average people, particularly younger generations, that are getting racked with tax bills and debt burdens that they didn't vote for, they had no say in, and that's what we have right now in America.
And there's a lot of videos online right now of a lot of young people talking about how they did everything right. They did what their parents told them to do. They went to college. They took out that big debt, that big loan. They got their fancy college degree, and now they aren't making enough money to pay back their loans or to buy a house or to buy a car or to buy or afford anything that they really need. And they're wondering, where did it all go wrong?